talking about the full moon in Leo in Magha, Nakshatra. This is related to the divine ancestors, the Pitris. It's about pure teachings, honoring the traditions. I also talk about Mars in Aries and the tendency to fight and argue, and several other important things. So this is a video for the upcoming full moon in Leo in Magha Nakshatra that's happening on February 19th, which is Tuesday. This upcoming Tuesday, February 19th, I'm recording this on Sunday, February 17th. So this full moon will be in Magha Nakshatra, of course, in the sign of Leo, in Vedic astrology. And of course, this is the section of Leo that is literally related to the king on the throne. This nakshatra, of course, is definitely one of the main nakshatras in Vedic astrology. Of course, back into the mist of time, Indian astrology, the astrology of India has used the sidereal zodiac. And of course, that measures out the 12 portions of the sky and the 12 sections of the sky, and it measures them out as 12 because we have 12 lunation cycles each year. We have a new moon and a full moon, so there are 12 lunation cycles each year. So the sky is broken up into these 12 sections, and of course sidereal is a Greek word that means with the stars, but literally the term in Vedic astrology is the Narayan chakra or the Sayan chakra, and Vedic astrology uses to track the planets moving through the sky. We use the Narayan chakra, which means without the ayana. And so this Narayana chakra is it shows the alignment of the nakshatras with the sidereal portions of space. And so Leo, that Rashi, that sign, is occupied at the very beginning by the big star called Magha. It's actually called Regulus in Western astronomy, and even the Greek Ptolemy talked about the fixed stars in the constellations and spoke very prominently of the star Regulus in Leo as being like the heart of the lion. Now, the deity of this Magha Nakshatra is called the Pitris, or the divine ancestors, and it shows where we have reverence for our teachings, for sacred teachings, for those ancestors, those preceptors who preserved these sacred traditions and lineage for us to learn from and to study. It also has to do with our family in this lifetime, our sacred family, our divine family in this lifetime, and the bonds that connect us to our lineage. And so there's a sort of reverence, especially for sacred teachings, ancient teachings, and keeping the teachings pure, the purity of those teachings. And again, you can really see this connection, especially with the nakshatra of Magha and the Rashi, the sign of Leo. And again, there's really no debate about this in every Vedic astrology text. The Rashis and nakshatras are aligned. And you really see this connection, particularly at the beginning of the fire signs, because you have these 3 nakshatras at the very beginning of each of the fire signs, and we start to see an alignment of things like gunas. The guna of Leo is sattvic, which has to do with these sattvic teachings, these pure teachings. And again, Magha is ruled by the Pitri, the divine ancestors, the sacred teachers, and the need to keep those teachings pure. And again, if you're not using the sidereal zodiac, Magha is actually in Virgo. So the heart of the lion is in Virgo, which just doesn't make any sense, right? So, of course, we have this integrity, which is, of course, why Indians used sidereal-based zodiac. This is why the system is that way. And the connection for your life over the next 30 days or so, or as you are developing these psychological, intellectual qualities of Magha and Leo, is to cultivate a pure relationship with your teachings, to find those pure teachers, pure teachings that are aligned with the tradition, that are, fact-based and not about ego and opinions and all these other things that corrupt teachings. And so it's really a very important time with this full moon, which literally shows the mind and even the emotions and that sort of inspiration in our mind, and the attachments in the mind, and the vasanas or the samskaras in the mind, very much aligned with pure teachings, pure power, pure wisdom that come from the preceptors, that come from the divine ancestors, the divine teachers, and to really honor and cherish the purity of those teachings, right? And now it's opposite Aquarius, which is where the sun is at this time. And we always look at where the sun is in any lunation cycle, whether it's a new moon or a full moon, because, of course, the sun is the anchor of the energetic matrix, because the sun is at the center of the solar system, and the moon, of course, is reflecting the sun's light. And when we have the full moon, the sun is opposite the full moon in the sky. So this energy of Leo, which is that pure power as it relates to Magha Nakshatra, it's the pure power of the teachings, or the teachings and their capacity to convey the pure power and the truth and the illumination that comes from those things, and how that makes for a strong individual, for an individual that understands the truth, is clear about it, and how that individual strength and power must be shared with culture and with the people, and how the people can also take away from that pure power and pure wisdom, right? So, for example, like I say, there is a source of truth and light that needs to be protected, preserved, defended. Look at it even in a cultural sense, or in the sense of even what I'm talking about, like with teachings and whatnot. Those teachings can get corrupted very easily, right? If we just kind of turn them over to anybody. Everybody's got some opinion, everybody has something to say about the teachings, but to preserve the sanctity and the integrity of the teachings, which is that Magha Pitri's Leo energy, that is the real sort of effort now, so that the culture and the society can really benefit from the purity of the teachings. And again, Aquarius has to do with the culture, with the masses, with the people, and the tendency of the people, if the traditions aren't preserved, to kind of corrupt the teachings and then to kind of lose their way. A lot of that happening in this world now. We're kind of in a fact-free zone, or a post-intellectualism, a post-factual era, especially with all the internet geniuses everywhere. Anybody with YouTube followers can just spout off anything they want and have 1,000 people cheering them on, and suddenly they're just as legit as an expert, right? We see this everywhere. And so this is a big problem, and we're about to have a big shift of Rahu going into Gemini, Ketu going into Sagittarius, which is going to show great opportunities for evolving this, fake news age of propaganda where people can say anything and have enough people believe it so that it muddies the water and nobody knows what's true anymore, right? So, I saw something yesterday, and it was this yoga called rage yoga, where it says cuss, drink, and what was the other thing? Cussing and drinking and screaming while you're doing yoga. It wasn't catching on very well, but last year I saw a thing called drunk yoga. It was this woman in New York starting this thing, drunk yoga, drinking wine while you're doing yoga. Again, not to mention that these things could be maybe unhealthy, especially if you're doing like, downward dog, the blood rushing to your head, drinking wine, which is, not very healthy either. But these things don't seem to be catching on very much, but because, but just by mere virtue of the fact that people do that is, it shows how the teachings can get corrupted. And we do have a sanctity of teachings and lineage, and these traditions aren't just dusty old religious beliefs. They're based on rishis and masters and case studies, and especially like if you get into astrology, for example, and practice for thousands of years and testing the results of these things and having scientists for thousands of years look over and refine techniques, and archaeologists come thousands of years later to see the validity and the legitimacy of certain things. So preserving, first understanding and researching and having intelligence and respect and reverence for the ancient teachers is the first real step of the Magha and that section of Leo, and then preserving those teachings and those traditions for the culture so that the culture can benefit and not lose its way by false teachers, corrupt teachings, is a big part of what this lesson is about. So notice that in your life. Notice how pure and authentic your teachings are, your teachers are, whether or not you're willing to actually do the work to find the good teachings, or you just listen to the easiest thing or the person you like the most or some other thing, and that's what you believe, right? So again, this issue between the purity of your teachings and your teachers and the real power that you get and the real benefit that you get from your teachings is really big. And of course, that's a quality of Leo. It's this quality, it's the king sitting on the throne, right? And that source of power, not just for the individual, but for the kingdom as well. Because a kingdom is also only as strong as the prevailing philosophies and the prevailing teachings. Look, for example, like in the US, the Constitution says this. This is just the country or the government, which is our government, falling back on the teachings of the ancestors. The great, George Washington wrote, and James Madison wrote, Thomas Jefferson. These are the Petries. These are the divine ancestors for the country. Other countries, have their history. Indian, country has an ancient history, but then the modern era, you have Gandhi, you have Nehru, you have, overcoming the British Raj, and you have, these are the teachings, these are the philosophies that preserve culture. And again, they're not just up for grabs. They're not just, well, my opinion is this. and it's just as legitimate as anything anybody else could say. Of course, you want to subscribe, but even if you are subscribed, you want to click this little bell that says get notified about every new video. You want to click that, and then you will be notified, and it has the little ringer on after you do that. So make sure to see, I got 100 YouTube followers saying I'm great. So again, watch out for that stuff, because this is a lot of what's happening now in the world the last couple years, with Rahu going through Leo and then going through Cancer. We've had a lot of this, as I say, kind of a post-intellectual, post-factual world now, where everything is up for grabs. So it's even more important to return to the facts, be able to see the facts clearly, and to be able to test teachers and see how fact-based they are, and how much they're just puffed up with their desire for power or something, because this is how it starts to get corrupted as well, right? Because especially if people think they can make some money at something, or they can be powerful, or they can, be a celebrity or be popular, they might just say something. They might just want to court controversy, just want to fight to defend their opinions and their drama and their way of doing it, as if it's somehow unique or desirable, when it might just be a lot of BS and just wrong, right? So again, we need to be vigilant to that kind of stuff, like the yoga stuff, the drunk yoga or the rage yoga, right? So besides that, and again, this is a full moon there, so we'll see this for the next, couple weeks, where it's really a time to check in, with those things. And, but we also have a very close Venus-Saturn conjunction in the sky right now. And so when Venus-Saturn join, it tends to bring down the enjoyment that we have, or that we can experience from relationships and other people. It might tend to, show some pressure around those things. And they've been in Sagittarius, so maybe there's been a kind of coming to grips, having some of your illusions and projections kind of shattered a little bit around, others, even like romantic disappointments and whatnot, because that's the nature of Venus in Sagittarius, is to be kind of inflated with those things. But then Saturn says, oh, but you only get this much happiness. It's going to be filled with some disappointment, and those kinds of things can also be prevalent. So that's the other, that's a big, energy as well during this full moon. And also Mars is quite powerful now in Aries, so it could be the possibility, or the, people could be ready to fight and argue and battle over their ideas and their opinions. And, I saw as soon as Mars went into Aries week or so ago, week to 10 days, see people challenging people to debates and want to argue, and people just programmed, man. You look around and you see people are ready to take up arms and do their fighting, do their battling, right? And so, again, it's great for having the real courage and fighting the real fight, which is to face ourselves and to face down our own opinions. And, what we tend to do is we tend to mistake the truth for our opinions. And that could be in a higher truth, like a higher truth as well. But let's just say on a personal level, this is right, I know it's right, and I'm ready to fight over it. I'm ready to fight for it, to prove myself, to prove it to everybody, right? When that's a weakness, an extreme weakness. If you gotta prove it to everybody, it's because you don't understand it. I saw a really good quote right after Mars went into Aries. I saw it last week I think it was on Instagram. It said, it was a quote attributed to Carl Jung, and it said, fanaticism is always hiding doubt. So anytime you see someone who's fanatical about something and they need to prove it to everybody and win the argument, and again, let's fight and debate it, and it's this way and not that way. It's only one possibility, fanatical about something. Understand it's because underneath it all, they don't know. Especially if it's something that's obviously not fanatical, like people who are fanatical about their religion. It's clearly because they have so much doubt that they need to pump up their doubt with this overcompensation. This is the only way it could be. It's the only way it could be right. Right? And so any kind of fanaticism underneath it all is doubt. And we could be in these kind of somewhat fanatical times with Mars and Mars and Aries, right? If someone has a fanatical bent, particularly if they have some other planets that are in low dignity where they have some self-doubt and things like that, they feel like they need to win. If for instance, like if Mars is weak in their natal chart, other planets are weak, they'll overcompensate. You'll see people overcompensate with fanatical energy. And then when Mars, again, like when Mars goes into Leo, or let's say Aries, or, of course, Capricorn, where it's exalted, you'll see the person with often the weak Mars in their natal chart will be ready to fight now. I'm ready to defend myself now. So again, look around and notice people that you know of who have a weak Mars. They might be ready to just fight now because Mars is in Aries. And he was just in Pisces, and he was in Aquarius, so for a few months, it's been kind of subdued, right? Even in Capricorn, Mars is quite strategic. He can also be a fighter, but in Aries, for sure, he's really ready to fight. Aries and Scorpio, and Leo also, and Sagittarius. So this is something else. Don't get sucked into stupid debates and fights or things like that. It's easy to take the bait, especially if you maybe also have a strong Mars or maybe even a weak Mars. Actually, if you have a weak Mars, you'll probably get sucked into it. A person with a strong Mars will probably just be acting, and with this Mars going into Aries, they're really strengthening themselves. And see, this is the way Mars works more than any other planet. We realize the futility of the fight and how stupid it is and how much we waste our energy when we fight with other people, when Mars is powerful. Because when we lose a fight, we realize that the real loss was the loss of energy and the expenditure of energy and the anger behind it. And so when Mars is powerful, that's the lesson. The power is in intelligence, is in learning. And when someone's Mars is weak, let's say like if it's debilitated or something, we don't learn. We get emotional about it, and it's hard to learn the lesson. We have to keep overdoing it, then losing, overdoing it, losing, and the pain of loss. This is how weak planets work. They keep cycling through the lower form, whereas a powerful planet learns from the mistakes a lot more easily, and has the real capacity to fight and win rather than fight in a lower form, right? They learn how to fight the good fight, like if it's Mars, and instead be very disciplined and strategic, and then we can really emerge victorious. So notice that with this powerful Mars and that fighting, that sort of fighting spirit. And again, because Venus and Saturn are also in Sagittarius, there can still be a lot of principles, and we're kind of fired up around what we believe and all that stuff. So that's a few other things that are sort of on the back burner. The last thing I'll say is this Mercury. This Mercury has joined the Sun in Aquarius, and it's opposite the Moon. So Mercury in Aquarius is also quite good for bringing intelligence into the cultural expression, into the cultural exchange, right? That's, the cultural exchange has to do with Aquarius and the people and the collective, you would say. And Mercury brings intelligence, skills, so it's a really good time to be communicating on that larger platform. And if you have a platform, it's really good to be putting out things that benefit others, that really benefit your tribe, so to speak. And Aquarius is really your tribe, right? And so Mercury brings great opportunity to communicate with your tribe in a way that's beneficial to them, that's fun, that's enjoyable, things like that. So it's overall, it's a pretty good transit. This time right now, that strong Mars gives us that courage and discipline to make ourselves strong and powerful. That's the most prominent planet. Again, the Venus-Saturn conjunction. Venus will be moving into Capricorn, but for the last week or so, and particularly as we get near this full moon, we can feel the Venus-Saturn on our relationships a little bit, particularly cycling through some disappointment because they're in Sagittarius. I didn't mention Scorpio, Jupiter and Scorpio. I've talked about it a lot, so it's about going deeper into our psychological stresses and worries and fears. I'll talk about him a little bit more because he's about to go back and forth here in between Scorpio and Sagittarius. But mainly talking about this full moon in Magha, in Leo, great time to find that inner power, that illuminated mind and consciousness that's connected with pure teachings, good teachings that are time-tested, that are from the scriptures, from the sastras, from the great rishis, from the teachers. Beware of the sort of counterfeit teachers, especially in this kind of fact-free, post-factual world we live in now. And notice those who are just puffed up with ego and false pride and lower forms of power, and how they try to hijack good teachings. Don't be confused by that stuff. Now's the time to really see it. You can really see it with this full moon in Magha, in Leo. So anyway, I hope this was helpful.